Welcome everyone to the Meshery development meeting. Today is the 8th of December and we are at KubeCon week. So we have KubeCon China kicking off this week, and like every KubeCon, we do represent ourselves a lot there. And so like going over the first topic for today, we have Meshery and Service Mesh Performance project office hours at KubeCon. So these office hours are scheduled back to back on Friday. So a couple of maintainers will be joining the event, and everyone is welcome to join the session and represent Meshery and the Layer 5 community at the project office hours. We also have a talk by meshmate Anita on solving the service mesh adapters dilemma. I think we mentioned this on the community call last week, but to give a quick update on it, like Anita will be talking about Meshery, obviously, and yeah, like check out her talk. All the links are in the meeting minutes. And we also have the tag network and the service mesh working group event at KubeCon. So a couple of our projects are represented within the service mesh working group in the CNCF tag network. So Meshery service mesh performance, and Get Nighthawk being three of them. So this is on Thursday. So feel free to jump in on all of these sessions and interact with the maintainers and learn more about the project. And yeah, as I mentioned, all the links are in the meeting minutes, and the link to which is in the chat. All right. So let's get an update from Nitish on the changes to Meshery UI. Oh, I guess Nitish is not on the call. Maybe Aditya, like, could you give us a quick update?
Sure. Okay. So last we spoke, Shanthan was working on a couple of things from. Could you go to the progress tracker, Navindu? So Shanthan was working on a couple of items. So basically, right now for the V0.70, the roadmap for Meshery UI, we are shifting over to Redux state management. So now we are in need of people to create reusable React components to recreate Meshery UI. So this is the progress tracker in which we have a list of all the components that need to be created. So if anyone's interested in creating React components, they could put the name against one of these components and get started on working with them. And yeah, so I think that's about it. There's no other update as of now. I think we are going to redesign a couple of stuff. So after that, we'll get to it.
By the way, on this topic, there was someone on the Monday's websites call, which is a great call to talk about front end things, right? There was someone on there, I think, that was going to try their hand here. Is that same individual on the call? Just can't remember, but I wanted to be encouraging that this is a significant opportunity in the V070 release. There's basically an overhaul of the UI, of Meshery's UI happening. So a great time to get into Redux, into observables, and kind of that style of.
I might look into this. Is it okay? Like,
oh, Deepayan. Oh, very good.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I will look into this and let you know if I want to work on anything or not.
Nice. Yeah, good. There's, as you do, I encourage you to bite off the smallest little piece that you can, only because your probability of success just increases, like the smaller the item is. And so that's great. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. It's a good opportunity to get in on the ground floor. Some of the UIs will just be enhanced, kind of remain the same or kind of be enhanced, but a lot of them will probably get more dense. There's just a lot more functionality forthcoming. And with a little bit of forethought, a little bit of user experience design, there's less pages that users necessarily have to navigate to. So one of the things that Nitish had worked on, and so had, well, there's a bunch of people, actually, I can't list them off, but they had worked on the connectivity wizard, or basically like an initial configuration wizard, which is currently hidden in Meshery's UI. But it's a concept that's like the implementation is challenged, and that's why it's hidden. So it doesn't function as it necessarily as it should. But that concept is still, I would suggest, is still very much needed. People, they come to a service mesh, the service meshes are confusing. And Meshery's, one of its goals is to make them much more palatable. Part of getting Meshery up and connected and talking to the various system entities, Prometheus and Jaeger and each of the different service meshes in Kubernetes means that you've got to go set up and configure Meshery. And so a little bit of a step through connectivity wizard, bringing that back in the .7 timeframe is probably something to do. So if you are digging in here in this activity, do confirm that you have access to the different Figma design files. There's one for Meshery specifically. So cool.
Any other items to add here, or any other comments?
Another update is that we recently switched over from npm to yarn on the restructuring branch. So if you can't get your dev server up, it's because you don't have yarn installed. So that's something to keep a lookout for.
All right. Thank you, Aditya. Before we move on, I think we have a newcomer among us. So Hung Lee, are you joining this particular call for the first time? If so, would you like to say hi to the community? If you are having issues with your mic, you can use the chat. So I think.
So, by the way, just as a quick, Hung Lee has been on the newcomers call and the websites call. And so Hung, it's nice to see you on this call. It may sound repetitive, but it's nice for people to introduce on each of the different calls, just because there's different people that join the different calls. And so anyway, Hung, do say hi in chat if you get a chance.
Right. So moving on to the next topic, Lee, do you have an update on this, or I don't think Barik is on the call now.
Yeah. All right. So that next topic is the one that's highlighted. It's a design review for how messages and message channels are leveraged inside of Meshery. There's an open consideration around. There's a few action items in this area. So today, Meshery uses Go channels as part of its communication. It also uses NATs as another part of its communication. And as we look to enhance the communication between the various Meshery components, both internal server components as well as external adapters, the performance load generators, the Meshery operator and mesh sync and that kind of a thing. There are two design specs that discuss how the messaging system and the message format and the use cases for them unfolds and can be enhanced. So this is one of them. We talked about this particular one on the community call on this past Friday. So there's a few action items to follow up on right now between Michael Gefeller and Barak. These two are championing this effort. They need feedback and assistance. Michael is on vacation for probably about a month. And so jump in and review, add your feedback, comments. If you're looking for additional context, last Friday's community call, the recording will be up shortly. So any thoughts on or questions on this topic before we advance? There's a collection of, and Bami, since you're on the call, you might be able to do this. I think it's in the Meshery channel. There's a collection of follow-up action items on this topic that might be good to copy and paste into the meeting minutes so that we can be sure that they're persisted before we lose them in Slack. Okay, assuming no questions or comments on that topic, it's kind of a deep one. The next topic is really like the .6 release is upon us. It's, collectively, the project is essentially ready for this release. They're like its predecessor, the .5 release, which was jam-packed full of, like, I'm not sure, 2 or 3 or more new architectural components. The .6 release also includes a couple of new architectural components and some significant redesigns in some areas. So it's kind of a big thing to write up and tell the world about, which also means it's kind of a big thing to test. And so in tomorrow's build and release call, there's a bi-weekly build and release call on Thursdays. It's been kind of a long time coming with it. We need to make a go, no go call on is the current release candidate 2, is it meeting criteria? And is it time for the full release? So there's a spreadsheet out there that tracks the test cases. We need to put a focus on it. Ashish, you're on the call. You've recently brought forth a significant amount of integration testing for the adapters. If you would, before tomorrow's call, do you mind highlighting the test cases in this sheet that you consider those integration tests cover?
Okay, I will.
And, okay. Thank you. That'll help us. There's 1 or 2 of the rest of you who've been, there's a number of you who've been involved in this effort to do testing in the past. Now is a great time to go through and grab the second release candidate, grab the current release, the current stable release, and give it a run through. Update the spreadsheet as you go, create issues as you go if you find any. So.
Hey, Lee. I was testing the mesh yesterday, just deploying it locally with the RC2 build, and found an issue with the Linkerd adapter. It causes the container to crash. For that type of issue, I did create a GitHub issue for the Linkerd adapter. But is there another place that we're tracking issues like that around this? Is you have a bug tracking system that you use, or is it all inside GitHub?
Yeah, that's a great, man. It's yes and no. I hear you. GitHub is we've begun to use ClickUp a bit as like the free version of that tool to help track across repos, like, and help track priorities and various features and functions. When I say we, like there's just a small collection of folks who've been tracking a few items in there. And so we don't, I figured I'd mention that. It's probably not, right now it's not the real answer. Like the real answer is no. One of the best places for us to probably call attention to like a release blocking thing is probably in that spreadsheet, probably in the that test case spreadsheet, and begin to use either some color coding or to I don't know, to identify items as blockers, like either in a new column or something like that. Like we do need to establish, to your point, like rigor. Like, between now, we're halfway to a 1.0. So between now and a 1.0, we need to get processes like this established, down pat. There's hacks that we might use or tricks that we might use is when you search through, when you do a GitHub search on the web UI, is to do a search that's inclusive of either all repos in a repository or all repo, I'm sorry, did I just say all repos in a repo? I mean, all repos in an org, like the Meshery org, to the extent that Meshery depends on service mesh performance, that spec, or on service mesh patterns, like that org. There's a few orgs. We can have commonly referenced GitHub searches for like specific tags. So Jared, this might be a good topic for tomorrow's build and release call. That currently there's a GitHub process document in the community drive. It talks about the various ways in which we have different labels on GitHub issues, different bots. What else does it talk about? I don't. Just like it is a process document about what we do in handling GitHub. And one of the things that it does is it itemizes what issue labels are available and what their purpose is. There's, I think, 3 or 4 labels that talk about severity of the issue, whether it's like urgent, high priority, low priority, I think. Jared, if you give it just a little bit of thought, you might have a scheme to suggest, like either we change the names of those or we designate one of those as being like, or we create a new one, like one of those as being release blocking, or, we've got priority levels or something like that. Like it, and then we can have a commonly referenced GitHub search, just a hyperlink that searches across repos for any issue that has that label. And that might help drive the discussions on this call and the rest of the calls.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at that process document. And sorry I didn't mean to sidetrack the call. I was just talking about the release, and I just wanted to bring that up and ask the question. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah. Don't hesitate to suggest a process if you'd like to. We can't really go wrong. We should just start somewhere with issue labels or something.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So for this issue, like Jared also mentions 2 possible solutions. Like, is there one we can choose right away, or would we need to look into it? Like, if anyone has any opinions about that, we can either revert the image back to this or disable CGO. So maybe we can, I guess, like we can take a look and try to get back to Jared.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, I'd be happy to take this one on, and just wondered which solution would be preferred. But I can submit the PR for this if there's no objections.
Jared, that would be fantastic. So yeah, just seeing the issue for the first time, just as one voice of others that might chime in here. So the backstory here, part of the backstory here is we'd like to have small image sizes. That's nice. We'd like to have the fewer lines of code and the fewer dependencies in those images, the smaller the like attack surface area, the smaller the number of security issues, hopefully. And so that's part of what was driving toward like a distroless image. In this case, though, the current one that's using, to your point, isn't working. So we can revert back to to a different distroless image. Okay. Or
so the one there was that's the image that was being used before that PR I referenced up there. It's the same image. I mean, more or less. The static image is just, it doesn't include a few of the libc packages that the base one does. It does say that the tag was bumped, but I don't know if that's exactly accurate, because it was changed to to include different packages. It's not like a version bump. And I'm not sure exactly which CVEs were included in this, but that image was updated a couple of days ago. These are checking it in GCR. I saw that these images are updated pretty frequently. Looks like I saw one a couple of days ago and one about a week or two ago. So they're updated relatively regularly.
Yeah.
I think in other adapters, we are using the distroless Node.js one, and I think we should use that one, because that way we wouldn't have any possible issues with the Cube Open API JSON schema binary that we are using, like we had with App Mesh adapter a while ago. So I think we should be uniform in the way what image we are using across all the adapters. So I think we can go with that.
Nice. It sounds like there's a suggestion to go with your first option, Jared. And in doing so, yeah, uniformity across the adapters is ideal.
So you're saying we should use the Node.js one for a Golang application?
Actually, the binary that on line 23, if you can actually see, Jared, there is binary cube open API-JSON schema. Actually, that's something that that adapters use to convert open API specifications to JSON schema, and that is unfortunately written in Node.js, and it is a binary, but it packs a lot of. It basically comes with Node.js runtime. So it seems like it's a single binary, although it's entire Node.js, and that actually relies on a lot of libc dependency, because Node.js is written in C++, so it has a lot of dependency. It's not a static binary. So actually, that's the reason we are using Node.js. We had to resort to using Node.js images even if we are completely statically compiling the binaries. So yeah, actually that's so I think that's what you were pointing with that. Why do we need Node.js in Golang? Actually, that was the reason.
Oh, okay. So this was in the linkerd adapter, in the Docker file, and I didn't see that schema referenced there. Wait, is this this is Istio, yeah. But in the linkerd one, I didn't see, yeah, that schema.
Yeah, if it is not here, it should be actually. I mean, it is not here, and actually it should be, because every adapter actually relies on that binary, at least for now, because it does a lot of auto component generation. So actually that is why it needs that particular binary. So actually it should be here, and probably we missed one of the adapters while we were adding that.
Okay. So would you like me to go ahead and add that schema and change the image as well?
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right, cool. Sorry, I think we're a bit off topic for this thing, but we can sync up in Slack maybe after this, and I'll clarify, make sure I'm on the right path.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Like, thank you for bringing this up. Like, yeah, it helps. Like, having a broken linkerd adapter like really hurts the v0.6 release. And thank you for noting it and taking time to actually go and fix it.
Sure thing. I'm actually, I think that maybe I'm just bad luck, because every time I touch Meshery, like it's something's broken. Because this actually seemed to block me from even starting Meshery, and this change was merged a couple weeks ago, so I guess nobody ran into it yet.
Is there any test we should be adding for this?
Hello? Sorry, what was the question?
I was just asking, like, the whole attendees, like, is there any test we could add that allows us to detect this faster, like during the CI/CD workflow?
There should be. To be honest, I haven't dug into the tests that are being ran, but I would think that just because all I did was pull the latest Meshery and deploy it, and I ran into this, and then was also able to repro it by just doing Docker run on the container, and it popped right up very consistently. So I think it would be easy to check.
Yeah, I think like we can cover it in the E2E test, like to make sure that everything is functional, the adapters are operational and running. Yeah, so maybe probably we should iterate over this E2E workflow and include these as well.
Sounds good.
Any other comments here before we move on to the next topic? All right. So we will have the build and release meeting tomorrow. So I think we can come back to this tomorrow and get a status update on this as well. All right. Moving over to Aditya, and I think Aditya has been working on the service mesh patterns catalog. Aditya, all yours.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Yeah, so I had been working on the service mesh patterns page, which is now the service mesh catalog. So basically here we'll list off a number of patterns which you'll be able to import into your UI. Right now, there's just a button that copies the link to this pattern, and you'd be able to paste that in Meshery UI. One roadblock that I'm facing is filtering out these patterns based on these filters. So that's the only action item left here. Other than that, this is like the preliminary stage of how it looks right now. Does anyone want to say anything about it?
Yeah, I will. Just to, by the way, to follow up on what Jared is saying, like it's not just because Jared is a quality like has a quality assurance background. Because some of the bugs that he's coming across are blatant, or others would hit them as well. It's more just that that we might have to. Well, we've been holding off on the .6 release because we've been trying to slow down to do testing, but we haven't been doing it well. Ashish has brought forward a lot of end-to-end integration tests, which are going to be really impactful and helpful. That's going to help in coverage in terms of the adapters, not so much in terms like some in terms of Meshery server. Piyush has brought forth a lot and or helped champion a significant jump in unit test coverage in Meshery CTL. Mario has been digging into functional test coverage using Cypress from the perspective of Meshery UI. There's each of these vectors are necessary, and unit test coverage is necessary. The integration test coverage, it makes for quick wins or quick broad stroking, broad sweeping coverage. So Rodolfo had been here, is currently a Meshery maintainer. He's been inactive for longer than the 2-month period that we have in our governance docs. And so Mario, both because you're like geographically adjacent to Rodolfo, also because you've got something of a similar focus in terms of Cypress and things, you might strike up a conversation with him and see where he's at in terms of his ability to participate, his ability to maybe engage and help advance some of the Cypress tests that you're leading. But if people try the project and they hit an ugly error message, or it just falls over, or like there's only like it's okay for some time. We are, for a project to be like that, we're kind of, we've hit, it's downhill from here, like toward the 1.0 release. So we do need to give it, and we are taking appropriate steps, but we also do need like a quality champion. We also do need, there have been 2 working group leads in the past for like a build and release working group. But I think that the folks that are here are either spread too thin or too focused on new functionality. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll have to either identify someone new to step up, or spread the love around, or slow down functionality. Like I was going to talk about doing design spec reviews and scheduling those for .7. We should probably talk about scheduling, bug smash days, or like the bug smash reviews instead, and how we can get better coverage relatively quickly with integration tests. I think we've got a number of you have made significant progress both in GitHub workflows and in Cypress. And so, and then also some unit tests, but it's more the integration tests that are going to get us somewhere quickly. So please think on this. And so one of the things that I was encouraged that Jared just said was that he might submit a PR, which Jared, your engagement in specific is fantastic any which way, PRs or not, but like that was the first time I'd heard you say that. So that's exciting.
Thank you. Yes, it took a while to get through some of the hoops, and
Yeah, you've probably got a couple of scars on your back from like the lashings you had to take as you went through corporate and legal.
A little bit, but it was worth it for you in the community.
Yeah. You're stronger for it. Nice. But anyway, I mean, like, it's not fun to hear, or I don't think, but like, and Jared wasn't here to make us, wasn't necessarily trying to make a statement. We're trying to like, but the reality is like, is really important. I mean, it's like significantly important. Yeah, please think on this a little bit if you all would. So, okay. Hey, by the way, so what Aditya is showing, this is something else to think about. I think the call to action for most of us is to think about this a little bit. So wrap your mind around this concept that Meshery is, it's a management plane for, aimed at service meshes. It also orchestrates or interacts quite a bit with Kubernetes. It lets you deploy applications on Kubernetes or on service meshes, configure Kubernetes, configure service meshes. Like some of you that have been either working on or watching as MeshMap is evolving, I think it becomes a lot more obvious that Meshery is capable of configuring anything in Kubernetes as well as anything in the different service meshes, the service meshes that we have adapters for. Okay, good. As people go to make those configurations, they create designs. As people go to use Meshery, it's nice to have functionality out of the box or more functionality out of the box. And like as an example, WebAssembly filters and how many of those are included out of the box, and the fact that people can bring their own, like the more that come out of the box, the more, well, conceptually, the more value that people find, users find, right? So Meshery is a management plane, but it's also a management platform. The reason that you refer to it as a platform is because of its many extension points. If you look inside Meshery's architecture, one of the architecture diagrams, I think it's like slide 7. I can't believe I have that memorized, but I think that's what it is. It is, it's littered with extension points. And so it's through extension points and through that Meshery becomes a platform. It's an extensible platform. Part of the content then that people can bring is, so it's slide 5. The content that people can bring, it comes in a couple of different forms. We actually start to talk about content in the .6 release. So it's patterns, applications, filters, and that's probably not the end of, or that's not probably, it's for sure not the end of the content. Like Meshery will have a policy engine. Meshery will also have a workflow engine, or more of a workflow engine than it does today. The users will be able to configure policy, which becomes content. Meshery will come out of the box with like best practices. So, content in that regard, policy in that regard, workflows in this regard. It will come with add-ons. So Pravin was just having an open thought on a call that we were having yesterday about some of the add-ons that Meshery, like supports in a first-class way. So Meshery supports Prometheus and Jaeger and Grafana and these things in kind of a first-class way. He was looking at potentially another add-on. And so having said all that, if you go back to what Aditya was just showing in that service mesh catalog, these patterns that are emerging are, in my mind, one form of content. A pattern, this is what we just said, you can have a pattern, a filter, your workload, like an application, and then ongoing, you can have more. And so I was speaking with the Artifact Hub maintainer, or one of the Artifact Hub maintainers yesterday about, actually, Aditya, if you don't mind, if you go to artifacthub.io, on the front page, you'll probably see, like you might think of Artifact Hub as being Helm centric. And certainly I think that's probably the majority of their packages are there. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see some other examples of package types, keep going. Package types other than, keep going. There, the blue. Package types other than Helm charts. That's the first in the list. But there's Falco rules, OPA policies, Tinkerbell actions, Coordinates plugins, Captain plugins, Kata scalars. speaking of Kata scalars, the main maintainer of Kata was just sent an email to me this morning asking to jump into the service mesh patterns book. So there's a lot of people interested in what you all are doing. And so my question is, well, should there be Meshery extensions listed here? And should, maybe should we do both? Should we have some of these extensions, these patterns to start with out on Artifact Hub? And also, or it's either an or it's an and or. Should we have a service mesh catalog, the Meshery service mesh catalog, where people can bring their filters, bring their patterns, share their apps, do their. Think about this, if you would, please. There's a mock-up for what this looks like. So this effort is like a line item on the .7 release. There's a mock-up on like slide 28. Oh, I'm so close. Yeah, 27 or no. I'm sorry, slide 30. Slide 30 and 31 of what this might look like. If you go to slide 30, there's an import. There's an import button. Yep. So part of the concept here is that people would peruse the catalog and click to import that content into their Meshery deployment. So. Let that permeate your noodle a bit, percolate on it. So,
yeah, one question, Lee. So once we have a basic Istio installation, right, Canary way. So as you told, is there a, you just import the URL and apply to your Meshery and the workflow continues automatic, or is it a controllable way?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, good question. It would be a controllable way where right now it's a concept that you'd be able to click to import. Right now, what you do is you click to get the URL, and then when you go over to your Meshery deployment, in this case, since this is a pattern, you'd go to the patterns section in your Meshery UI, and you'd click import, and you'd paste in the URL, and so from there you can then say, well, yeah, I liked this starter pattern, but I wanted to change a few things before I actually deploy, before I provision.
Yeah. Okay, the only why I ask this question is Istio, right? So I'm targeting Istio. So basically, Istio comes up two ways of installation, right? One is CNI way, and another is a sidecar injection way. So people may install Meshery doesn't support as of now CNI way of installation, as I know, but it's like a sidecar injection with init container, right?
Correct. Although Piyush or Navendu, that's correct. Pravin, but just let me qualify. Piyush, Navendu, do you guys want to talk about Meshery CTL mesh? Does that currently support provisioning a service mesh through Meshery CTL?
Yes. So yeah. Like the Meshery UI, the Meshery CTL mesh deploy, there's a command called Meshery CTL mesh deploy, which you can use to deploy, as you mentioned, Istio. So if the only requisite is that you need to have the Meshery Istio adapter running, and Meshery CTL will handle deploying the service mesh.
So Pravin, kind of those two ways right now, both the Meshery.
No, I understand. So basically, I changed the code. So there is the two paths in Meshery, right? One is Helm way of installation, another is the Istio CTL way of installation, right? So you can use Istio CTL, download the Istio CTL and keep it in a repository inside the Meshery directory. So, and you enable the use binary way of configuring. So then normally it will install through Istio CTL. That's okay. But now what thing is like, if you go for a basic canary way of upgrading, right? So the canary way of upgrades differs from like whether you install the Istio using CNI, Istio CNI plugin. Istio CNI, I think, I'm just checking the installation part of the Istio, right? So when you install a Istio, so normally what happens, there are two ways to install a Istio. One is it comes up with like a init container, like init pod. Init pod comes and configures the IP tables rules and goes away, right? So that's the installation. So and
wait,
another
wait, Praveen, since you're like, let's get accurate. Like, are you talking about like, no, that's not how you install Istio. That's how you onboard a workload onto Istio. Right?
Not
like,
really, right? Maybe I'm getting confused. Yeah,
Istio doesn't install itself through an init container. Istio, when you deploy it, like that's how you onboard a workload. So, like, what's your question? Is your question about how to install and run Istio? Is your question about how to install?
No, my question is, how do I install Istio, right? Today, when I go and into a Meshery and install Istio, so normally it installs the Istio. So basically, so and normally when you, as you said, it's true. But normally that webhooks will be always enabled. So the webhooks comes up with the like Istio installation, right? So now when you deploy a workload, the init container comes up and like and it deploys the application, right? It's a provisioning of an application, as you said. I totally agree with you. But if somebody wants to install an Istio without that init container, then they need to enable the CNI way of installing the Istio. Is that right? My understanding, Lee? Maybe I'm wrong because I am totally new to this while. Because the canary way of canary, you cannot do a canary with the Istio CNI. So because CNI, you need to take it separately in the canary. Like
okay, I got you now. So it's a great question. Actually, it's a great question for us to do a workshop on, like a workshop on Istio. Actually, like I'll understanding your question now. Yes, you're right. That's kind of the most concise way that I could tell you. But yeah, so leaving Meshery aside, because your question has nothing to do with Meshery.
Correct.
Yep, you're right. But I wouldn't say installing Istio. I would say, how does a workload come onto the mesh?
I totally agree. Because your mesh sync should detect whether you have installed Istio using CNI or like init container, like then take an action based on like how the canary deployment works with that, right?
Correct. The way that I would phrase that is that Meshery should be aware of applications that are workloads that are running in your Kubernetes environment. And Meshery should, because it's a service mesh manager, it should also be cognizant of the fact that that workload is either currently running on a service mesh or off of a service mesh. What qualifies as running on a mesh or off of a mesh is service mesh specific. In Istio's case, that has to do with the presence of a sidecar. In other service mesh cases, that's not the same. But irrespective, Meshery should become should be aware of that. Mesh sync does take a look at that. That data is internally collected and yet to really be exposed in Meshery's UI, like in a way in which it's like, hey, here's all your apps. These are on the mesh. These are off the mesh.
Maybe what I'm thinking is like we can add a like Istio installation is done. So after that, we enable the sidecar injection, right? So that's the next step, like what we do. So when we do a sidecar injection, at that time, we can ask whether you want to do a init container way of sidecar injection or CNI way of sidecar injection.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think the thing that you're hitting on is that, by the way, Nivendu, can you take back the host and share the meeting minutes? We've only got a few minutes left. So Praveen, you're right.
Sorry.
That's fine. The current management interface, the current UI in Meshery for like provisioning Istio and then subsequently configuring it, that needs to be put in the trash bin, and then a new one needs to come forth that's like highly configurable. Where you can begin to see what that might look like is, well, Abhishek Kumar is not on the call, but it would look like, I'll send you a link. Like it'll look like what's. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Maybe I'm way behind this community. Yeah.
No. No.
I'm just experimenting like high level and putting my thoughts onto it so that like I will also learn from it. So before I make my plans on this. Yeah. Great.
You're in the right place for that. Yep. Those are good questions.
Yeah.
I mean, those are good suggestions. Like some of your questions become suggestions because Meshery should be, there should be an easy button. Like, I don't really know. Like the user doesn't really know. I don't know. I just want a service mesh. Like I just want that one. Like do intelligent like defaults for me. And it also should have the advanced button where it's like, well, no, let me, configure each item before you do it. And Meshery should be making that obvious too. Right now, it's like, it's got the easy button, which is helpful to kind of getting up and going. But yeah, when you want to get serious about it, or as you start to want to make some of your own choices.
I was thinking the default way of installing is CNI way. So that's what I was thinking. So let's see. Let's
Nice.
Thank you, Praveen. Thank you. Aditya, one suggestion for the patterns catalog was that we could maybe add the download button. So since we are running out of time, let's move on to the next topic from Mano. Mano, would you like to take it from here?
Yep, I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
Yeah. It is just a UI revamp where I changed some of the UI components, added a better error message and a better statement. And the second thing which I added in the PR was a check for the JSON that we are inputting, whether it's a valid JSON or not. So basically, the issue which we were facing, that if somebody was initiating a Grafana dashboard in a Prometheus, we are in the Prometheus channel, we should not be allowing Grafana queries over here. So if the data source is Grafana or our targets which we are aiming are not valid, now we will get an error message which is somewhat like this. So it will not show a 500 error on the screen, rather than it will show an error that something, your JSON is incorrect somewhere. That's the update on this PR.
Comments to Manav?
Manav, for my part, I was totally sidetracked, but just very quickly, were you just saying, hey, look, you're improving the experience that is currently there for people to load up a custom set of panels?
Yeah,
and
also in targeting the error which we were getting, like Barik raised an issue. I think
Gotcha.
it
Cool.
targets somewhat this issue. I have mentioned it. Barik will have a review, then we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all from me.
That's cool. So
We have one more topic for today's call listed from Ashish. Ashish, would you like to start this discussion?
It's not very important. If you ask, I'll go ahead with that, or I'll talk about that in the GitHub PR that I created. So I don't know, should I go ahead and talk about it for a while? Or?
Let's skip if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And, just a final call for as we gear up for the V070. Thank you, Husseina. Husseina and others are identified as feature champions in that roadmap. So please do take a look at the roadmap. Engage with your comments, your questions, your suggestions. And I think that's it. We're at time. And so Navendu, thanks for hosting. Very good to see all of you. Catch you in discuss or on tomorrow's build and release call.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.